Hey guys, welcome to RT Infrastructure Micro Lessons, where we cover short lessons about network automation, and AWS. Today, micro lesson is on how to create a switch virtual interface, also known as a SVI. So, an SVI is a virtual interface on a VLAN with basically a IP assigned to it. And you know how we have physical interfaces where you have the physical port, you'll connect an actual device to that port on the switch, and that's how they get their connection. But in this case, we have a virtual interface, and instead of a physical cable, it's a virtual interface, and then we connect the VLAN to that virtual interface, which allows connection to the network and outside the network, if we get more specifically and detailed into it. But an SVI is only created when that VLAN needs an IP address on the switch, so you're not going to be using this all the time. The IP address usually is used to manage a switch, so if you want to SSH into the switch, or if you want to grab information from the switch using SNMP, that's when you would want to use a switch virtual interface. Or if you have a layer 3 switch, so that's a switch that does switching and routing, if you kind of want to make that the gateway for that VLAN, you can also use the IP for that. So let's get into it. So we're actually going to create a SVI for VLAN 500. That was our accounting VLAN in our previous videos. So we're going to go ahead and do a interface VLAN 500, and this is pretty much the SVI. We create the SVI, the virtual interface, and now we're just going to give it an IP address. So we'll just give it a IP address of 192.168.1.1, and then we'll give it a subnet mask of 255.255.255.0. That's a slash 24, and there you are. So we have our virtual interface created, and we can do a show IP int brief. And as you can see, once I scroll down, you can see this virtual interface right here, and it has an IP address assigned to it. So one thing to note that is important to understand that creating a VLAN does not automatically create an SVI. As we just saw, we actually had to create a interface in the VLAN in 500. And also to be aware that you can still have multiple VLANs on the switch, such as VLAN 20, 30 configured on it. And these VLANs can still separate devices and carry traffic across the ports and the trunk ports, even if they do not have an SVI. So just to remember, this is really only just to manage the switch and possibly create a default gateway. Now, typically, we'll use on how I do it is I'll typically make a SVI for whatever VLAN is kind of dominating the switch. So, for example, this switch is an accounting switch. We have accounting VLAN. Accounting is going to be using a switch. A bunch of accounting devices will be connected to it. So it makes sense to create a network based on the subnet of the accounting department. So that's what I would create the SVI. That's where I would create it on the VLAN 500 for accounting. Obviously, you're going to have multiple VLANs on here, and they may have their own SVI for a different switch or their own gateway, but that doesn't necessarily mean you need to create one for it. So typically I will do whatever VLAN is kind of dominating the switch, or we have a lot of VLANs on. I would create an SVI for that switch. So it just makes it easier for me to know, okay, this is an accounting switch. And so it's going to have an accounting SVI. All right. That will do it for this one. I'll see you guys on the next one.